Grand Admiral Cathax's morning had started like any other aboard the Confederation flagship Eternal Glory *. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed under the bridge's ambient lighting as he settled into his command throne, accepting the traditional morning stimulant from his aide. The bitter liquid, a necessity for his species' functioning, was halfway to his mandibles when the holographic display flickered to life with an urgent report. "Unidentified vessels detected in Sector 7 Alpha," announced Lieutenant Varax, his secondary appendages twitching with mild concern. "Multiple signatures, small profile." Cathax's compound eyes focused on the readout. The data couldn't be right. He blinked all 4 sets of eyelids, but the numbers remained unchanged. These dimensions, they're barely larger than our escape pods. The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. Lieutenant Commander Jessica McKenna, the human cultural attaché, stationed aboard as part of the diplomatic exchange program, kept her expression carefully neutral as she studied her own console. Her fingers, however, tapped a precise pattern on her thigh, a coded confirmation signal to Earth Command. "Magnification, maximum," Cathax ordered, his voice carrying the distinctive clicking undertone of his species. The main view screen shifted, revealing a cluster of vessels that seemed almost laughably small against the backdrop of space. Their hulls gleamed with an odd, almost organic sheen, but showed no obvious weapons arrays or defensive systems. A chorus of chittering laughter rippled through the bridge. Even the usually stoic weapons officer couldn't suppress his amusement. "Perhaps they're escaped mining drones." "Admiral," someone suggested. Cathax raised a primary appendage for silence, though his own mandibles twitched with barely concealed mirth. "Scan for life signs." "None detected, Admiral," reported the sensor officer. "But there are unusual energy readings. The pattern is unlike anything in our database." For a fraction of a second, concern flickered across the Admiral's crystalline features. New technology always carried risk, but surely nothing so small could pose a threat to the mighty Confederation fleet. His flagship alone massed more than 10,000 times the entire cluster of unknown vessels. "Log them as primitive anomalies," Cathax decided, reaching again for his stimulant. "Probably some newly spacefaring race's first attempts at exploration. Send a standard warning buoy with our territorial claims and—" "Sir," interrupted Jessica McKenna, her voice carrying that peculiar human smoothness that still unsettled many Confederation officers. "Protocol suggests we should conduct a full spectrum analysis before dismissing unknown contacts." She kept her tone respectful, deferential even, while her fingers continued their subtle dance of communication. Cathax regarded her with what passed for a smile among his kind. These humans, always so cautious, so obsessed with procedure. In the 3 years since first contact, they'd proven themselves clever enough, but their technology was centuries behind the Confederation. Their massive, clunky ships were a testament to their primitive engineering. "Your concern is noted, Lieutenant Commander," he said, using her human title. "But I assure you, anything that small poses no conceivable threat to Confederation interests. Log the contact and continue patrol." As the bridge crew returned to their duties, Jessica allowed herself the smallest of smiles. In her earpiece, masked by quantum encryption that the Confederation hadn't even theorized yet, a voice whispered, "Phase 1 complete." They took the bait. The tiny fleet continued its seemingly aimless drift through Confederation space, each vessel precisely where Earth Command had calculated it should be. Inside them, quantum processors more advanced than anything the Confederation had ever encountered processed vast amounts of data, mapping every detail of the sector's defenses. The greatest invasion fleet in human history had just been dismissed as primitive anomalies, and not a single shot had been fired. Exactly according to Plan *. Dr. Amanda Brooks slouched in her lab chair, surrounded by holographic displays showing movement patterns of the mysterious fleet. 3 days without sleep had left dark circles under her eyes, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was onto something huge. The Confederation's Central Science Authority wasn't known for hiring humans, especially not as xenotechnology experts, but her reputation for pattern recognition had earned her a place. "Computer, overlay flight paths from the last 72 hours," she commanded, reaching for her sixth cup of coffee. The holographic display shifted, showing hundreds of intersecting lines in three-dimensional space. To anyone else, it looked like random wandering. To Amanda, it was anything but. "There it is," she whispered, sitting up straight. "Computer, highlight all points where three or more paths intersect." The display lit up like a Christmas tree, revealing a perfect geodesic grid. These weren't random movements. They were systematic mapping coordinates, executed with military precision. "Dr. Brooks." The voice made her jump. Standing in the doorway was High Researcher Call, his crystalline form casting prismatic patterns on the lab walls. "You missed the morning briefing." Again. Amanda gestured at her displays. "Sir, I need you to look at this. These ships everyone's laughing about. They're not lost, and they're definitely not primitive. Look at the precision of these movements." Kittle's secondary appendages twitched in what she'd learned was the equivalent of an eye roll. The Admiral has already classified these anomalies as insignificant. "Perhaps you should focus on your assigned projects." "With all due respect, sir, that's exactly what they want us to think." She manipulated the display, highlighting specific intersections. Each point where these paths cross corresponds to a major Confederation defensive installation or sensor array. They're creating a complete tactical map of our space. The High Researcher chittered in amusement. "And I suppose these tiny vessels are crewed by warrior giants." "Really, Dr. Brooks, your human imagination." "They don't need crews," she interrupted, her frustration breaking protocol. "Think about it. We're judging them by size because that's how the Confederation has always done things. Bigger ships, bigger weapons, bigger crews. But what if someone took a different approach? Miniaturization instead of expansion." Kittle's amusement faded slightly. "Present your findings to the Admiralty if you must, but don't expect them to take this seriously." 4 hours later, Amanda stood before the Confederation's Admiralty Board, her evidence displayed on the chamber's massive screens. Before she could even finish her introduction, the laughter began. "These toy ships," Admiral Zakax wheezed between clicks, "are conducting military reconnaissance. Perhaps they're also powered by imagination." "The pattern is clear," Amanda insisted, highlighting another series of intersections. "They're building a comprehensive—" "Enough." Grand Admiral Cathax's voice boomed through the chamber. "Dr. Brooks, your service has been appreciated, but perhaps it's time you return to your own people. Your imagination exceeds your usefulness." "Dismissed." Just like that. Amanda gathered her data crystals with trembling hands and left the chamber, the sound of chittering laughter following her down the corridor. Back in her quarters, she slumped onto her bed, career in ruins. Her terminal chimed. A new message, sender unknown, quantum encrypted. Her hands shook as she read. "Dr. Brooks, you're the first one who noticed. Want to know more? Meet at Observation Deck C, 200 hours. Come alone. A friend." She stared at the message for a long moment. It could be a trap, or worse, a joke. But her scientist's curiosity won out. She had to know. At precisely 200 hours, Amanda stepped onto the observation deck. The vast window showed the distant, primitive fleet, still executing its perfect pattern. A figure stood in the shadows. Lieutenant Commander Jessica McKenna, the human cultural attaché from the flagship. "Hello, Dr. Brooks." Jessica smiled. "Let's talk about what those ships really are." The truth, Amanda would soon learn, was far more incredible than even she had imagined. The Pride of Zarkax, gleaming flagship of the Confederation's diplomatic corps, glided toward the mysterious fleet with all the grace its massive bulk could muster. On its bridge, Chief Ambassador Velor adjusted his ceremonial carapace plates, rehearsing the patronizing greeting he prepared for whatever primitive species they'd encounter. "Recording devices active," his aide announced. "Ready to document first contact for the historical archives." Excellent. Veeler's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. These primitives shall remember the day they were welcomed into the embrace of Confederation civilization. The massive view screen showed their target, a cluster of ships that would fit in the Pride's shuttle bay with room to spare. As they drew closer, the ambassador frowned. Something was off about these vessels. Their hulls seemed to ripple, almost like liquid metal. Hailing frequencies open, the communications officer announced. Veeler drew himself up to his full height. Unknown vessels, this is Chief Ambassador Veeler of the Confederation. We welcome you to our space and offer guidance to your developing species. The screen exploded with light, resolving into a crisp hologram that made the Confederation's best displays look ancient. A human male appeared, dressed in what Veeler recognized as a military uniform, sitting in what appeared to be a command center. He held a steaming cup of coffee and wore an easy smile. Chief Ambassador Veeler, the human said, I'm Fleet Commander Jack Reynolds, United Earth Defense Force. I see you finally decided to say hello. The bridge fell silent. Veeler's secondary appendages twitched in confusion. There must be some mistake. These are your vessels. Reynolds took a sip of coffee. Sure are. Beautiful, aren't they? Each one's running a quantum AI more powerful than your entire fleet's combined computing power. No offense. But they're empty, Veeler managed, his diplomatic training deserting him. Well, yeah. Reynolds chuckled. Why cram pilots into tiny ships when we can run them remotely from Earth? Speaking of which, how's the coffee in your officer's mess? Lieutenant Commander McKenna. The cultural attaché stepped forward, no longer hiding her military bearing. Terrible, sir. The Confederation hasn't quite mastered the art of a good brew. Veeler's crystalline complexion paled. You've been spying on us. Observing, McKenna corrected. Big difference. Just like those primitive ships have been observing your defense capabilities. By the way, you might want to update your shield harmonics. The fluctuation pattern is pretty predictable. Reynolds set down his coffee. Now, Ambassador, we could keep pretending these are first contact negotiations, or we could have a real discussion about humanity's place in the galaxy. Your choice. Veeler's mind raced. Every protocol, every procedure for first contact assumed technological superiority. Nothing prepared him for this. You deceived us. We adapted, Reynolds countered. You saw what you expected to see. Primitive ships from a primitive species. Never occurred to you that someone might think differently about space warfare, did it? While you were building bigger ships, we focused on making them smarter. The ambassador's gaze fixed on the liquid metal hulls of the human vessels. Those energy readings our sensors couldn't identify. Quantum field generators, McKenna supplied. The ships can reconfigure themselves on the fly. Pretty handy for slipping through shield gaps or adapting to new threats. Which brings us to why we're here, Reynolds continued. Humanity would like to establish diplomatic relations with the Confederation. As equals. Veeler's translator must be malfunctioning. Equals. But your civilization is barely. Chief Ambassador, Reynolds interrupted, his smile fading slightly. Those ships you dismissed as harmless. Each one could disable your flagship before you could blink. We're trying to be diplomatic here, but don't mistake courtesy for weakness. As if to emphasize the point, one of the tiny ships rippled, its hull flowing like quicksilver, as it split into dozens of smaller drones that danced around the Pride of Zarkax in perfect formation. Veeler's ceremonial carapace suddenly felt very heavy. I shall convey your message to the Confederation Council. You do that. Reynolds picked up his coffee again. Oh, and Ambassador. Dr. Brooks was right about everything. You might want to put that in your report too. The hologram winked out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Outside, the human ships continued their dance, a reminder that the galaxy had just become a much more complicated place. Dr. Amanda Brooks stood in Commander Reynolds' Texas Command Center, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The facility, hidden beneath an unremarkable ranch outside Austin, made the Confederation's most advanced command posts look like children's toys. Quantum entanglement processors, Reynolds explained, gesturing to walls lined with sleek black panels. Each one controls a subset of our fleet. No lag, no signal interference, instant response time across any distance. This is impossible, Amanda muttered, watching holographic displays show real-time data from hundreds of ships simultaneously. The energy requirements alone would be impossible with Confederation technology, Reynolds finished. That's why they never saw us coming. They're still thinking in terms of conventional physics. A familiar voice made Amanda turn. We had to think differently. Lieutenant Commander McKenna strode in, having shed her diplomatic facade along with her Confederation uniform. Earth couldn't match their resource base or industrial capacity, so we stopped trying. Reynolds nodded toward a central display, showing one of their ships dissecting itself into smaller units. Know what inspired this? Watching my kids' robotic building blocks. Got me thinking. Why build massive ships when you can build smart ones that adapt? The Confederation's entire defensive doctrine is based on size advantage, Amanda said, understanding dawning. Their shields, their weapons, everything is calibrated for capital ship warfare. Exactly. McKenna pulled up tactical displays. Their shield harmonics have gaps, tiny ones, but they're there. Gaps their engineers never bothered fixing because nothing could be small enough to exploit them. Well, almost nothing. Amanda watched in fascination as simulation after simulation showed human microships slipping through these gaps. That's why you recruited me. You needed someone who could confirm the Confederation's blind spots from the inside. Among other things, Reynolds said, his expression turning serious. We need you for what comes next. The Confederation won't take this lying down. When they realize how thoroughly we've mapped their weaknesses, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. A tactical officer burst in, face pale. Sir, the Confederation Council has declared emergency sessions. They're calling it a security crisis. Multiple displays lit up with incoming data. The Confederation's rapid response fleets were mobilizing, their massive ships moving into defensive formations. Amanda's breath caught as she recognized the patterns. They're preparing for war, she whispered. Reynolds remained calm, sipping his ever-present coffee. Right on schedule. Lieutenant Commander, initiate Phase 4. McKenna's fingers danced across control surfaces. Throughout Confederation space, human vessels began executing pre-programmed maneuvers. Not retreating, not attacking, just shifting. I don't understand, Amanda said. What are they doing? Showing them what they're up against, Reynolds explained. Each ship is positioning itself near a critical Confederation installation. Their sensors can't track our quantum communications, so they have no idea we're coordinating the entire fleet in real time. The displays showed Confederation commanders growing increasingly agitated as they realized the implications. Every major military facility, every strategic choke point, every critical infrastructure node, all were within reach of ships they'd dismissed as harmless. We don't want war, McKenna added softly. But we need them to understand that bigger isn't always better. Amanda watched as a Confederation dreadnought, large enough to cast shadows on planets, maneuvered ponderously near one of the human vessels. The smaller ship simply rippled, divided into dozens of micro-units, and surrounded the massive vessel like a swarm of glittering fireflies. It's beautiful, she breathed. Terrifying, but beautiful. Reynolds set down his coffee cup. Dr. Brooks, we're about to enter some very delicate negotiations. The Confederation needs to accept reality without feeling humiliated. That's where you come in. Me. You understand both sides. You saw what we could do when everyone else dismissed us. We need you to help bridge the gap, to help them see that cooperation is better than conflict. Amanda looked at the displays again, at the dance of human ingenuity against Confederation might. She thought of all the times they'd laughed at her theories, dismissed her warnings. When do we start? She asked. Reynolds smiled. We already have. Phase 4 is just the beginning. Vice Admiral Zextal had never lost a battle. His record stretched back 3 centuries, his tactics studied at the Confederation War College. Now, standing on the bridge of his flagship Inevitable Victory, he intended to prove why. Target the lead vessel, he commanded, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Show these humans what real power looks like. His weapons officer hesitated. Sir, Dr. Brooks' report suggests. I don't need analysis from a human sympathizer. Zextal's crystalline carapace flushed dark with anger. Fire. The massive ship's primary weapon array lit up, launching a barrage that could crack a small moon. The human vessel, barely visible at this distance, didn't attempt to evade. Instead, its liquid metal hull began to ripple. Direct hit in 3, 2. The weapons officer fell silent as the impossible happened. The tiny ship split apart like a blooming flower, dissolving into hundreds of even smaller units. The Confederation barrage passed harmlessly through the space where it had been, while the microships scattered in a precise pattern. Impossible, Zextal whispered. Then his ship's alarms began to scream. Multiple hull breaches. The damage control officer's voice cracked with panic. They're inside our shields. On the tactical display, dozens of red dots appeared throughout the massive vessel. The human microships, each now no larger than a baseball, had slipped through gaps in the shield harmonics that Confederation engineers had deemed too small to matter. Get them out, Zextal roared. Launch internal defenses. Sir, we can't target them. They're too small for our weapons to lock on. From his command center on Earth, Commander Reynolds watched the situation unfold. Status report, he ordered calmly. Lieutenant Chen, his tactical officer, smiled. Micro units performing exactly as designed, sir. They're accessing the Inevitable Victory's primary systems through maintenance conduits. No casualties on either side. Reynolds nodded. The plan had always been to demonstrate capability without causing deaths. Send the message. Aboard the Confederation flagship, every display suddenly changed. Commander Reynolds' face appeared, still wearing that infuriatingly calm expression. Vice Admiral Zextal, he said pleasantly. I believe this proves our point about size and capability. Your shields are currently being held open by 37 micro units. Another 50 have reached your engine core. The remaining 113 are positioned throughout your ship's vital systems. Zextal's secondary appendages trembled with rage. This is an act of war. No, Admiral. This is a demonstration. If we wanted war, your ship would already be disabled. Instead, we're showing you what happens when you dismiss something just because it's small. As if to emphasize the point, one of the microships drifted past the bridge viewport. Its liquid metal surface shifted, forming a miniature mirror image of the Inevitable Victory before dissolving back into its original form. Your entire tactical doctrine is based on overwhelming force, Reynolds continued. But nature teaches us that the mighty don't always triumph. Ask any elephant that's been taken down by a swarm of bees. Sir, the damage control officer interrupted. They've completely mapped our internal systems. They could shut us down at any moment. Zextal's pride warred with his tactical training. What do you want? The same thing we've always wanted, peaceful coexistence. But as equals, not as primitives to be patronized. You've seen what our tiny fleet can do. Imagine what we could accomplish together instead of against each other. The bridge fell silent as Zextal considered. 3 centuries of victory, undone in minutes by ships he could crush in his claws, if he could catch them. The Confederation, he began. Will adapt, Reynolds finished, just like we did. Now shall we discuss terms for removing our ships from your vessel? Dr. Brooks has some fascinating proposals for technological cooperation. As his crew watched, Vice Admiral Zextal, terror of 3 sectors, did something unprecedented. He laughed. Send for Dr. Brooks, he said finally. It seems we have much to learn about thinking. Smaller. Throughout the ship, The micro-units began withdrawing, each one a testament to humanity's greatest strength. The ability to change the rules when the game seems unwinnable. The 8th Battle Fleet of the Confederation was a sight that had made entire star systems surrender without firing a shot. 50 capital ships, each massive enough to cast shadows on planets, moved into attack formation. Their crystalline hulls gleamed like artificial constellations against the void. Aboard the flagship World Breaker, Fleet Admiral Chikara watched the approaching human fleet with all 4 sets of eyes. 300 vessels, none larger than a Confederation shuttle, advanced in perfect formation. Final warning received from Earth Command, her communications officer reported. They're requesting we stand down. Chikara's mandibles clicked in amusement. They had their chance for peaceful submission. Launch fighters. All ships, weapons free. The space between the fleets lit up as thousands of Confederation fighters poured forth, their wings catching starlight like angry wasps. The human ships remained in formation, seemingly oblivious to the approaching swarm. In his Texas Command Center, Commander Reynolds watched the tactical display with Dr. Brooks at his side. They never did read your full report, did they? Amanda shook her head. They were too proud. Even after Zextel's experience, they think numbers and size will overwhelm us. Time to show them the dance, Reynolds said quietly. Lieutenant Chen, initiate the Firefly protocol. The effect was immediate and mesmerizing. Each human ship rippled and split into dozens of smaller units, turning the formation of 300 into a swarm of thousands. The microships moved with impossible grace, weaving patterns that seemed random but followed complex quantum algorithms. By the first stars, Chikara whispered as her fighter squadrons tried to engage. The human swarm simply flowed around them like water around rocks, their liquid metal hulls reflecting fighter beams harmlessly away. "Mom," her tactical officer called out. "They're inside our formation." The microships darted between the massive capital ships, exploiting gaps in their defensive screens that had seemed too small to matter. Each one carried a targeted EMP charge, precisely calibrated to disable specific systems without causing catastrophic damage. Shields failing on the stellar dawn. Came the first cry. World Ender losing power. Star Crusher's weapons are offline. Chikara watched in horror as ship after ship reported critical systems failing. The human vessels moved like a cloud of fireflies, each one executing its part in an intricate dance of technological precision. Fascinating, Amanda mused, watching the tactical display. They're using emergence theory, each micro-unit following simple rules to create complex group behavior, just like actual fireflies. Reynolds nodded. Nature's been perfecting swarm tactics for millions of years. We just needed the right technology to apply those lessons to space warfare. The Confederation fleet's formation began to break apart as ships lost power and maneuverability. Not a single vessel had been destroyed, but they were effectively neutralized. "Incoming transmission from the World Breaker," Lieutenant Chen announced. Chikara's image appeared, her crystalline features set in what humans had learned was an expression of grudging respect. "Commander Reynolds, it seems we underestimated you. Again." "A common mistake," Reynolds replied kindly. "Your fighters are impressive, Admiral. But you're still thinking in terms of traditional space combat. Fleets meeting in grand battles, trading broadsides like old sailing ships. We had to think differently." "Different," Chikara mused, watching a group of microships dance past her viewport, like Dr. Brooks tried to tell us. "Speaking of whom," Reynolds gestured to Amanda, "she has a proposal for you. One that might save both our species a lot of trouble." Amanda stepped forward. "Admiral, imagine combining Confederation industrial capacity with human miniaturization technology, not for war, but for exploration, research, advancement." "The Council will never agree," Chikara said, but her tone lacked conviction. "The Council," Reynolds countered, "is about to receive similar demonstrations from human fleets across Confederation space. They can adapt, or they can watch their military advantage disappear one disabled ship at a time. Chikara was silent for a long moment, watching the firefly dance of human ships among her mighty but helpless fleet. "Perhaps," she said finally, "it's time the Confederation learned some new dances." Around them, the microships continued their graceful movements, their liquid metal hulls catching starlight like hope made manifest. The Confederation Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every member species packed the crystalline amphitheater, their varied anatomies creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. At the center, Commander Reynolds stood with Dr. Brooks beside a holographic display of a single human microship. "The question before us," High Counselor Stahl announced, "is not just about military capability. It's about the future of warfare itself." "Commander Reynolds, proceed." Reynolds gestured, and the hologram expanded, showing the ship's internal systems. "Humanity didn't choose to build small because we wanted to," he began. "We did it because we had to. Earth's resources were limited compared to the Confederation. So we looked to nature for answers." The display shifted to show footage from Earth, a murmuration of starlings, a school of fish evading predators, bees defending their hive. Nature solved the problem of survival against larger predators millions of years ago, Amanda added. Swarm intelligence, distributed processing, adaptive behavior, these aren't new concepts. We just applied them to space warfare. In orbit above, the remnants of the 8th Battle Fleet watched as a demonstration unfolded. A single human vessel split into its component units, then reformed into different configurations. A defensive sphere, a scanning array, even a perfect replica of a Confederation cruiser. The Hornet's Nest formation, Reynolds continued, changing the display, was inspired by how Earth insects protect their colonies. The microships formed an interlocking network of defensive fields, creating an impenetrable barrier around a civilian transport. Each unit contributes to the whole, adapting instantly to any threat. A Confederation admiral leaned forward. "But the power requirements are minimal," Amanda interrupted. "Because we're not brute forcing our way through space. Each microship uses quantum entanglement for communication and coordination. No lag, no signal interference, perfect synchronization across any distance." The chamber erupted in excited chittering as the implications became clear. Hextall raised an appendage for silence. "And you propose sharing this technology?" "With conditions," Reynolds nodded. "Earth wants partnership, not domination. We've seen what the Confederation can build with traditional technology. Imagine what we could accomplish together." The hologram shifted again, showing hybrid designs. Confederation capital ships equipped with microship launchers, defensive screens augmented with adaptive swarm units, exploration vessels that could split into specialized components. "It's not just about warfare," Amanda emphasized. "Think about deep space exploration, disaster response, astronomical research. The applications are endless." A younger council member stood. "But this changes everything. Our entire strategic doctrine needed to change," Reynolds said firmly. "The galaxy isn't divided between primitives and advanced species anymore. Humanity proved that innovation matters more than tradition." The chamber grew quiet as a new hologram appeared. The tiny fleet, executing a precisely choreographed dance around the massive Confederation ships, their liquid metal hulls flowing like quicksilver in starlight. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Amanda asked softly. "The marriage of nature's wisdom with advanced technology. This is what humanity brings to the galaxy, not just new weapons, but new ways of thinking." High Counselor Extol stood, his crystalline form catching the light. "Commander Reynolds, Dr. Brooks, the Council requires time to deliberate. But I believe I speak for many when I say that the galaxy became much more interesting when humanity decided to think smaller." As if in response, the microships above formed a new pattern, a double helix spinning against the stars, a DNA strand writ large across space. humanity's signature on the cosmos. In the Texas Command Center, Lieutenant Chen smiled at his displays. "Sir, the Hornet's Nest formation is maintaining stable coverage of all civilian assets. The Confederation Admiralty is. Well, they're still trying to figure out how we do it." Reynolds sipped his coffee, watching the dance of ships above. Let them wonder. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to be the biggest or strongest, just the smartest. Amanda finished, thinking of all the times the Confederation had laughed at her theories. Now those same theories were revolutionizing space warfare. Above them, the tiny fleet continued its eternal dance, a testament to humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn limitations into advantages and weakness into unprecedented power. The signing ceremony for the Novaterra Accords took place in Earth's orbit, where both humanity's ingenuity and the Confederation's might could be displayed side by side. The World Breaker, freshly retrofitted with human microship technology, hung in space beside a cloud of shifting, shimmering human vessels. Commander Reynolds straightened his dress uniform as he stood in the observation lounge of the neutral station where the ceremony would take place. Dr. Brooks, now wearing the insignia of Earth's new Xenotechnology Division, joined him at the window. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, noting his rare moment of stillness without his signature coffee cup. "Just thinking about how we got here," he replied. 6 months ago, they were laughing at our tiny fleet. Now they're integrating our tech into their flagship. The door whispered open, admitting Fleet Admiral Jkara and Vice Admiral Zextal. Both wore ceremonial carapace modifications that sparkled with embedded quantum crystals, a fusion of Confederation tradition and human technology. "The Council is ready," Jkara announced. Though some still can't believe they're signing an equal partnership treaty with a species they classified as negligible last year. "Pride comes before the fall," Zextal quoted, his mandibles clicking in what they'd learned was amusement. "Though I prefer to fall upward." The ceremony chamber was packed with representatives from both civilizations. High Counselor Stoll stood at the central podium, his crystalline form refracting light across the assembled dignitaries. "Today," he began, "we acknowledge not just a treaty, but a lesson. The Confederation built its power on size and strength, believing bigger was always better. Humanity showed us that innovation often comes in unexpected packages." Outside, the human microships began their ceremonial display. Thousands of units moved in perfect synchronization, forming complex three-dimensional patterns that shifted and flowed like living art. The World Breaker launched its own complement of hybrid fighters, their Confederation bulk now enhanced with human adaptive technology. The Novaterra Accords, Xtal continued, establish more than peace. They create a framework for technological and cultural exchange. Already, our combined research teams have developed applications we never imagined. Lieutenant Commander McKenna, standing at attention near the Earth delegation, smiled as she remembered the Confederation engineers' faces when they first saw the quantum entanglement processors. Their entire understanding of physics had needed updating. Furthermore, Xtal announced, the Council has unanimously approved Dr. Amanda Brooks's appointment as head of the new Joint Technology Integration Command. Her insight, once dismissed, will help guide our civilizations forward together. Amanda stepped forward to accept the ceremonial staff of office, its traditional crystalline form now augmented with flowing liquid metal. A symbol, like everything else today, of two approaches becoming one. "The galaxy is changing," Reynolds addressed the chamber. "The old divisions between advanced and primitive species no longer apply. What matters isn't the size of your ships or the age of your civilization. It's your willingness to adapt, to think differently, to see strength in unexpected places." As if to emphasize his point, the space outside erupted in a dazzling display. The microships transformed into a vast neural network, each unit connected by streams of quantum-entangled light. The Confederation ships joined the formation, their massive bulk perfectly complemented by the swarms of smaller vessels. "To the future," Xtal raised his ceremonial chalice, where size matters not. To innovation, Chikara added. To understanding, Sextol clicked. To humanity, Amanda smiled. To all of us, Reynolds finished, finally allowing himself a grin. And to tiny fleets everywhere. The chamber erupted in applause and chittering approval as the accords were signed. Outside, the combined fleet continued its dance against the stars, a living testament to what was possible when prejudice gave way to understanding. In the years that followed, the story of the tiny fleet became legend, not just as a military revolution, but as a reminder that greatness could come in any size, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply a new way of thinking. Above Earth, the first graduates of the Joint Fleet Academy practiced the Firefleet Protocol, their ships dancing between worlds, carrying humanity's greatest gift to the stars, the power of thinking differently.